Hello and welcome to the New Zealand Retirement Podcast. I'm your co-host and registered financial advisor, Raiden Page, alongside my co-host and fellow financial advisor, John Milner, CFP. This is the podcast that brings you all you need to know about retiring in the New Zealand context. So without further delay, welcome to this week's episode. I reckon one of the big red flags is all-in fees above 2%, including the advice fee, platform fee, fund fee, transaction fees. I think regular transaction fees are a red flag, in that if you're constantly moving around and doing this sort of share broker approach, I think that's probably a red flag.
Yeah, I think you're right. We don't have, as advisors, we don't have too many levers to pull. But one of those levers is fees. Obviously, when your portfolio is constantly changing, somebody somewhere is getting paid. As ironic as it sounds, in some respects, we're paid to try and do is the least amount possible, because the moment we do something, somebody gets paid somewhere. And if we've got a reasonably robust portfolio that should withstand any market or most markets in a reasonable way, the least amount possible. So we want to try and rebalance as least as possible, and keeping that turnover low puts our clients in a better position.
Yeah, I love John Bogle's quote. So Bogle says, the grim irony of investing is that we investors not only don't get what we pay for, we get precisely what we don't pay for. So if we pay for nothing, we get everything.
Yeah, that's great.
That's too right too, because we as a group, when we invest in companies all over the world, what we're getting is this average return. And if you want more, then someone else has to lose some.
That's right, yeah.
So if you're going along with the market, you're basically got to either not track it or track it. If you're going to track it, then what you're going to get is that market minus fees as your return. And if you're not tracking it, then God knows what you're going to get, whether you're going to get the market return, or you might get a little bit more in the short term, but not so much over the long term. Hey, you might, I think it's something like a 5-10% chance or something to sort of outperform the market. I think somewhere around those numbers.
Yeah, well, obviously, if you look at the SPIVA graphs, roughly on a global basis, 8 fund managers out of every 10 will fail to reach the benchmark, let alone blow it out of the water. So if a large international company with endless resources cannot blow the lights out with an indice, what chance of a single advisor do that consistent over a long period? What makes them so special that they think they can?
Yeah. And the trouble for them is that if that's the sword they want to fight with, I guess,
yes,
then it's the sword they've got to die with. If they're not underperforming the market for a period of time, I don't think that you can just go on and say, oh, yep, we did that wrong and we recognize that now. It's been 3 years of underperformance. I guess we'll just change the investment strategy. We've learnt from it. Because that's what we see. You get put in the fund that did well over the period.
At the client's cost.
Yep, at the client's cost. So you get put in these funds that did survive. So you get the survivorship bias. And it kind of keeps rolling on over, and you don't actually get that return that you're really hoping for.
Yeah, well, sadly, I was in one of those funds a few years ago. It was a New Zealand fund, a so-called smart beta fund, and it just didn't work. And there was blood on the floor everywhere. It just, it really didn't work. The market was too small, and, the theory's okay, I guess, but it didn't work, certainly for this fund, at least anyway. And I'll never repeat that again.
Yeah. What was the sort of fees on that? I'm just curious.
Honestly, I don't remember. They weren't high. They weren't high. Certainly, okay. I think they were under 50. They were certainly reasonable. But then again, I'm using the Kernel Wealth NZX 50 ESG tilted portfolio.
Yep.
I think we're looking at something like 10 basis points for that fund. I think it started at 25. And then the retail came down, and then because of scale, we were able to get that down to about 10. Very, very pleased. Very pleased with it indeed.
Yeah, and to be fair, that's not a portion of the portfolio, but when you're using other funds, dimensional funds or whatever it is for other pieces of the portfolio, it's still not that much more expensive. I think
Absolutely not.
It's 40 to 45 sort of.
Yeah, nickels and dimes. It's really cheap. As I said, that's one of those levers that we've got to pull. Fees, cost. If we can keep that down consistently over time, it compounds and makes a big difference to our clients. And that's not even taking risk into consideration. Just the fact that we're able to consistently get a lower fee for the client. That's one fee. I mean, certainly asset allocation is a big lever that we've got to pull. And through tilts, we're able to get an above market return again, without taking that massive single asset risk,
Mm.
which we know is very difficult to sustain over a long period.
Yeah, absolutely. The other red flag, it's really been grinding my gears for a while because there's sort of a marketing campaign. And if you know, you know. The other one that's a big red flag in my mind is we have had the best past returns for X period for X fund.
Sure. Yeah.
Because if I see that, I know it's not academically grounded. Because any competent advisor will tell you the past means absolutely nothing in terms of performance. The example I would use is I could say from 2017 to 2020, I could have been investing in the NZX 50, top companies in New Zealand.
Mm-hmm.
And if that was my strategy, you would say I was a bloody genius. I think it was compounding at a huge amount. I think it was, I don't know what it was, 11 or 12 or something. You would have said I was a genius and oh my God, look at that guy. I'm going to invest with him because he's really smart. What have we seen over the next 5 years? Pretty well flat.
Yeah.
Because the underlying strategy only pays off under the conditions that it pays off.
Mm.
So you can't really pick and choose and go, oh yeah, my fund is the best performing one. It could just as easily not perform into the future. I think Dimensional did some research on that.
KiwiSaver came along. For the first 3 years, I decided to map out the returns of KiwiSaver in a sort of balanced fund. And so the first year had a column and returns going from the top performer in the balanced fund to the bottom. And then the second column came along, and I then graphed out where the top one was in the second column, and then the third column. And, after a while, there was a pattern, which was basically there was no pattern.
Yeah.
It was all over the place. That there wasn't consistently top 1, 2, and 3 were the same. They just weren't. Just weren't. And that's the trouble. You could say, look, okay, if 2 out of 10 fund managers do manage to achieve or beat their benchmark, let's just use those 2. But they're never the same.
Yeah.
They're very rarely the same 2, unfortunately. So it's not as easy as that.
Yeah, very well said.
Which is why I guess we try to use a number of managers for their, what they do, looking at their cost, and have at the end of the day a low cost, broadly diversified portfolio. One
of the signs that I think you've got a really good advisor is if you can say, what do you actually do in terms of investment? And they can tell you. And it shouldn't be, this big long explanation where you pull up the whiteboard and you explain the 17 different returns that you're trying to attack. And my research team told me that this is now the go-to company that everyone should be buying. It's just really simple. Yeah, we're tracking this kind of index that's looking at these markets. We're looking at the average return of those markets. We might be bringing in some other drivers of return, such as value or mid cap and small cap. Maybe you do that for a little bit of diversification factor, but it shouldn't be too complicated.
Yeah, I think a lot of the value is keeping clients in their lanes, making sure that they've got their goals. It's very hard to hit a goal when you don't have one.
Yeah.
So to try and have some sort of achievable goal, I'm very keen on tracking clients with their goals. I like to use a Monte Carlo. To do that it's one of my favorites, which I've done for over 20 years, 25 years. Really just receiving a statement every quarter or every year telling you what the performance was over that past period doesn't really tell you what's going to happen in the future and whether you're likely to achieve that goal. And from the large brokerage companies, that seems to be lacking. That doesn't seem to be any cash flow planning at all.
I dream about, a bit of an aside, but I dream about the best possible financial advisor, the financial advisor that you get the most value out of. And it's probably the financial advisor that would talk you through, the cash flow planning, the risks, what happens if markets fall, what's kind of the plan there, but also gets to know you, your family, and what your dreams and aspirations are. They should be asking you, what do you want to do with the rest of your life? What sort of legacy do you want to leave behind? And go into some of those details. And even further, I think the best financial advisor in New Zealand would probably take you through estate planning as well and say, let's make sure that the worst thing that can happen, you passing away or you having some health issue that leaves you bedbound, how do we put something in place so that you're well looked after no matter what happens? Yeah, totally. Absolutely. And it's something that we're all lacking, I guess, not only in New Zealand, I can only imagine globally. What did I read a number of years ago? Picasso, who else was there? Aretha Franklin, they all died intestate. No will. Nobody knew what was going to happen, what was the plan, what was their wishes. They just weren't there. And yeah, I can tell you because a friend went through it recently. She her dad died, and absolutely no estate planning in place, and there's just no plan. Whereas if he had a very high quality financial advisor that said, hey, look, this is what it would look like. This is your asset register. So this will tell you where absolutely everything is. Sort of touches on what I was talking about last week. So you know where everything is if you pass away. This is the checklist that your family would have to go through. And it just makes everything so much easier in the most stressful time.
Yeah.
Where your kids and your partner or potentially sisters and brothers aren't completely lost.
I think it's a great idea, having that checklist, having a folder with everything there, everything listed, you know, where everything is, what's to happen, what are your wishes, what did you want. Yeah. I certainly know with my mother-in-law, I didn't attend the funeral for various reasons, but from what I've heard, it wasn't really her funeral at all, really. It was, I guess in some respects, that's what a funeral's about. It's about the emotional closure for a lot of people. But it wasn't her music that was played. She was given some rosary beads that were wrapped around her hand. The woman was an atheist, for goodness sake. I don't understand why she didn't catch fire, frankly, because she was so opposed to that religion. It wasn't funny. So having your wishes documented would be really, really helpful. And the fact that people actually know where their document is.
Yeah, and I'm actually open to holding at least copies of those documents, because financial planners are one of the first ones to find out. People go looking for money, and if they know that you have a financial planner, having an asset register sitting in the client files, that's not too hard to do. It's a little bit scary in terms of security, so we protect it well, but you know, I'm open to doing that for clients and making sure that whole process can be taken care of, because as soon as I'm familiar with the process, I know what they have to do, so it just takes all that stress off the plate. So what we're saying, going back to the episode, what we're saying is going the extra mile is what makes a truly quality financial advisor. It's not just about the money. It's not just about the investing. It's about you, your life, your goals.
Yeah, it's that whole thing that's enshrined in law, which is know your client. You know, how many advisors do actually know their clients? How deeply do they know them? What sort of relationship do you have them? Is it a transactional relationship, or is it a proper full-on advice relationship where you understand their needs and wants and their wishes? And that's illustrated through your work that you do with them. I see the minimum threshold's been lifted too with probate from 15 to 40, which is a good thing.
Yeah, that's fantastic, because those are actually small estates. $40,000 probably. When was it? I think 2009.
Yeah, I mean, it's 40 grand is not a lot, obviously, but it's got to be an improvement from the 15 at least, anyway.
Absolutely. Yeah, if you really don't have much left, the average Kiwi saver being about 30,000, that's nice then that your family can come along and just sort of distribute that out quietly.
Absolutely.
So what are the red flags in terms of investment solutions? So if we've got a good fee structure, you know, under 2% total fees, potentially a 1% advice fee, 1% investment fee, and we've got a healthy asset allocation that an advisor can explain to you in at least 1.5 minutes, what else should we be on the watch for? Well,
it would be kind of nice that the advisor's actually in contact with you on a regular basis as well. You know, if the first meeting where you invest the money was actually the last time you meet your advisor, that's a bit of a red flag for me as well. We want to be able to keep in contact, making sure that there's no other changes in the client's lives that should make a big difference.
Yeah. Absolutely massive. Yeah, because you know things do change, and that's so important to be able to know. I mean, one thing's like a trust thing, right? Like you've handed your money over. We've got a good system now, so it's a lot safer than it once was. But you've handed your money over to this person. They're charging you money to look after it, so they should have a relationship with you and know you, as we've been talking about throughout this conversation.
Yeah, well, I think we are in a much better position, but there's still people that fall through the cracks as well. Probably as late as a couple of years ago, I found a lady that was investing through an advisor, and that money was basically sent through the advisor's business. In other words, money was earmarked directly for the client, the advisor business, and then that money supposedly would then be sent on to the various places for investment.
God.
Which again is a no-no. It wasn't using a custodial system at all. It was supposedly direct to the providers, but it actually went through the advisor's business.
Yeah, that's a big no-no.
So I guess that's a flag as well. That was certainly a flag, and that went through I reported that through the Financial Markets Authority, and that eventually got shut down, thank goodness. It may very well have been well intended on behalf of the advisor, but there wouldn't have been any independent auditing going on. So that's something, again, there's a flag, which I suspect does come up now and again.
Yeah, well, that's a part of cutting corners, isn't it? Because I imagine he'd just think, I can just send it on as no harm, no foul. But it's not the problem that it's not a harm in that case. It's that there's potential for harm in that
Yeah, I
case.
actually had lunch with that advisor. I wanted to understand where he was coming from, and he didn't believe in platforms, custodial platforms. He felt that they were just charging a lot of money and weren't of value. And I guess he was, as you say, cutting corners, trying to save some money for the client, essentially putting the client at risk. I mean, if the advisor's business went down, and so would their money if the money was still in his account. So it's always got to be arm's length.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so that was only a couple of years ago, that, which is it's sad that that happens. So that was certainly a flag.
Yep.
Communications, fees, appropriate asset allocation with appropriate diversification. We've certainly seen, I've just shown you one from a broker house, a large brokerage house, with certainly their Australasian asset allocation was very concentrated. It would be a real hero or zero with that asset allocation. The international wasn't as bad, although it was very US centric, and had a lot of ETFs, so there would have been a lot of underlying assets behind that. But it was very US centric.
Yeah. So there's your concentration risks inside of both the US and New Zealand. If New Zealand does really badly or the US does really badly, then that's what the client eats. But they should be compensated, hopefully, for that risk. Maybe not.
Well, from what I've shown you, for the early stages of even the last 12 months, it just wasn't. They weren't being rewarded at all. There was no exposure to Europe, and sometimes Europe will save the day when the US isn't looking so happy. And there was no exposure to emerging markets either, and you can get some great returns out of that market. It's very volatile, of course, but again, further diversification. And again, it's one of those very rare levers that we have to pull.
Yeah.
Diversification, fees, to a minor extent, because we've got such a beautiful tax system in here, tax. And that portfolio that I did show you kind of ignores the tax side of things, really, doesn't it?
Well, absolutely. Yeah. There's no tax effectiveness in that.
There's no pie to be found
whatsoever. Yeah. Yep.
And there's pros and cons to pies, obviously, but there just wasn't any. Not just a few. There was none. So tax wasn't taken into consideration at all.
Yeah. So if I did some research just a little while ago, so I think it's just kind of helpful to put in context. It's about 0.25%. So if you're earning over $48,000 a year, between 48 and 180, you'll be paying about 30%, 33% in tax. If you're in that situation, it's about 0.25% of your money a year is going extra towards tax. If you have income over 180,000, you'll have an extra 0.55% going towards tax. So 0.5% extra in tax if you're a higher earning person and you don't eat pies.
I'll have to consult the kernel wealth spreadsheet that I was provided. I'm not sure if you've seen that at all.
I don't think I have.
Yeah, so they did a big report as well, and I guess, as a big pie provider, they're going to want to see that pies come up on top. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's either them or us. It's a case of looking at client situations, looking at their,
If you're not earning any money, say you're just earning New Zealand super, it's not absolutely necessary that you go into a pie to save on tax. I think the savings will be minimal.
Sure. Yep. Yeah, and obviously depends on how much money they've got invested as well, of course, because that's going to generate a reasonable amount of income as well, which sometimes is forgotten. I've got a client in that situation where that's all she has, government super. She's on her own, but she's got a couple of $1 million. That does bring a reasonable amount of income with it. It drives up her income.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, is there anything else? So we talked about excessive fees, complexity, transparency, concentration, illiquidity.
Yeah, well, again, I've got several people I'm talking to at the moment, and they are sadly in those property funds, and there's nothing at this stage I can do about it. They're in for as long as they need to be in, unfortunately, and they can't get out. They're underperforming. There's reasonable risk at the moment with the way the economy is trading at the moment for vacancies, is what I mean.
Yeah.
And so they've essentially been put into an illiquid asset. and they're stuck with it. That person's also got a forestry investment as well. I guess you're either in it for the long term or you're not in it at all.
Absolutely. And I'm always a big fan of having flexibility just in case things change.
Well, that's just it, isn't it? Life does change, and it changes very quickly. And so you've got to make sure that your assets are liquid all the time, which is what one of the little boxes I like to tick.
Yep, exactly. And I think I've seen that. I've seen some funny ads on the likes of Instagram of investing in, I think, whiskey casks and things like that.
Oh, yes.
Barrel of whiskey.
Yes.
That is the exact problem with those ones. You throw a whole bunch of money at it, and then maybe you see money in the future, maybe you don't, but it's not really a high quality investment. You're kind of just taking on a concentrated risk for what return they say you'll get, but God knows.
Absolutely. Measuring the risk and the reward.
Okay, well, that sounds like everything that we...
Good man. Hopefully you'll be able to take something out of that.
I think so.
Your magic.
So. It's been a good episode. Thanks for coming on.